This is a video abstract of the article Toward a Dynamic Notion of Value Creation and Appropriation in Firms, the Concept and Measurement of Economic Gain by Marvin Lieberman, Natarajan Balasubramanian, and Roberto Garcia-Castro, which was published in the Strategic Management Journal in June of 2018. In the article, we consider two sources of dynamic value creation in an industry, or what we call economic gain. The first source is what we term innovation, the improvement of firms over time. And the second is what we call replication, the displacement of inferior firms by superior firms. This work on economic gain was motivated in part to solve a puzzle that arose in a previous study that we published in the SMJ in June 2017 on the VCA model. In that article, when we applied the VCA model to assess value creation in the airline industry, we found that Southwest Airlines had, at least by the formulas applied there, created less value than we might have expected. And we came to realize that this was because the model, as we applied it in that paper, was looking at the first source of dynamic value creation, but leaving out the second. In the economic gain paper, we also focus on the U.S. airlines with particular emphasis on Southwest Airlines. Southwest developed a superior business model in the 1970s, which they rolled out in subsequent decades to compete against the established legacy U.S. carriers. We take American Airlines as the representative company within the legacy carriers, and you can see here that in 1980, Southwest Airlines was substantially more efficient than American. Southwest used 18% less fuel and had 40% less employees to deliver the same unit of output. The U.S. airline industry was deregulated in 1979, and starting in 1980, Southwest Airlines began to expand from its Texas base. It replicated its business model across the United States. By 2010, Southwest had become effectively a U.S. national carrier. This shows you that by 2010, both airlines had improved their operations substantially. Both American and Southwest had cut their fuel requirements per unit of output roughly in half, and Southwest cut its employment requirements in half, while American did even better, cutting their employment requirements per unit of output by 2/3. So American had, at least in part, caught up to Southwest, although Southwest maintained still some edge over American and the legacy carriers. This graph shows how one can represent the process I just described using the methodology of our study. The vertical axis is the amount of resource input required to produce a given unit of output, and the horizontal axis is effectively the size of the airline. As you can see here, in 1980, Southwest Airlines was extremely small, but it was much more efficient than the legacy carriers. By 1990, Southwest had expanded significantly. It hadn't become that much more efficient. In fact, it didn't even match American's performance in that dimension. But because it started off with such an edge and expanded, it was able to deliver a significant amount of value through this process of replication. You see here represented the combined processes of innovation and replication. The legacy carriers created value mostly through innovation, improving their operations in part by imitating Southwest Airlines. And in this decade, Southwest created value mostly through replication by gaining market share and leveraging its superior business model. So this process repeated itself from 1990 to 2000 and from 2000 to 2010. By our estimates, roughly half of the total value creation by Southwest Airlines from 1980 to 2010 came from this process of replication, of displacing the less efficient carriers as Southwest gained market share. But for the U.S. airline industry overall, most of the value creation came from innovation, from improvement in airlines' business models. So we show how dynamic value creation or economic gain can arise through these two processes, through innovation or the improvement of a given firm, and through replication or the displacement of less efficient firms by more efficient firms. If you're interested in more details on our work, we invite you to read both of our papers.